afternoon.
Okay. Are you ready?
Showtime.
It's not showtime. I don't know why it's not working on the internet.
Showtime.
But I just used my phone. I strapped it up to the webcam. Let's see if anyone's watching though. If someone's watching, let us know. While we're eating grapes, a Tu B'Shvat class. Right? They're delicious.
Aren't they? They're amazing.
Okay. I am officially closing the computer. So, good evening. Ruth is on. Irit Erev Tov, I see you. Here's what we're doing because my camera, I don't know what's up with the laptop. Even though Queen is here, but it's still not working. But we're on Facebook, at least on the phone, so whoever's watching will hear me. I hope the audio is good on the phone. Put it on sideways so they know. Ready? Today is Chamisha Asar B'Shvat, the 15th day of the month of Shvat. I want to thank Vivi on camera for bringing all the beautiful food, the grapes, the dates, the olives, and Orly, the pomegranate, we're on, right? We're on.
Sounds good.
So they missed all the actual, the blessings on the fruit and the carob and the shachiyanu and the, with all of the 7 fruit, the 5 fruit of Israel here. We'll talk about the wheat and the barley in a second. So we're blessed to have it all. I'll move the camera, we'll fall off the thing. But Erev Tov, everyone that's watching, I'm glad you can see us. Okay, thank God. So tonight, since it's the 15th day of Shvat, which is a special day, and we're all enjoying the grapes and the figs and the dates and the olives and the pomegranates. So tonight we're going to talk about all of those fruits. And instead of the typical, not typical, but we made a typical me in the Bible, where we take a biblical character and figure out what life lessons we can learn from the character of the Bible. Tonight, we're going to see the fruit in me and see what life lessons we can learn from the fruit that we are currently enjoying. Okay? Because just like everything else, every fruit we eat has a lesson for us in the kind of person that we are. Yes? So let's do it, shall we? We're going to start with a verse. There's only one verse, so there's no sheet. There's just one verse you need to know. Which is that it says in the book of Devarim, in the Torah, it says in chapter 8, verse number 8 of the book of Devarim, where God is describing the unbelievable, unique beauty and the uniqueness of the land of Israel. So the Torah tells us, Hashem, your God, is bringing you to a good land, a land flowing with water, a land of Eretz, Chita Usaora, a land of wheat and barley, Gefen, Te'ena, Verimon, a land with grapes, with Te'ena is figs, and the Rimon is the pomegranates, Eretz is Chalav Udvash, a land flowing with oil that comes from olives, and honey which comes from the sweetness of dates. And from here we see how the Torah, in a clear verse from the Torah, describes what is the beauty, what is it that makes the land of Israel such a beautiful, special, amazing land, is that it's a land of wheat, of barley, of geffen, of grape, of figs, of pomegranates, of oil, olives, and of dates. Right?
This is in the sukkah, the said, no?
In the sukkah, people put fruits to decorate, but it doesn't have to specifically be the fruits of Israel. It could be apples, it could be, whatever you want. Not in Florida, because someone told me he came to Florida and he lived up north, they put hang all the fruits in the sukkah, and then he came here, and the next day he came in the morning, and there was flies, flies everywhere. Yeah. Okay. So, before we get into the individual fruits and what each fruit can tell us in the kind of character and person we need to be, why of all the fruit does the Torah choose these 7 as the fruits of Israel? I mean, these are not the only 7 fruit that grow in Israel, right? You ever been to Israel? You went to the orange groves in Jaffa? There's oranges. You do have a lot of olive trees there. So you have Yeah, but my question is, why are these specifically the ones that are chosen of all the fruit to be the ones that we use to praise the Holy Land of Israel? So on the basic level, These fruit all grow, but they all provide sustenance and nutrition for us in Israel. These are fruits that are not just fruits. Each fruit contains many of they're healthy fruit. Pomegranates are healthy, figs are healthy, dates are healthy. They all contain very healthy, nutritious value for a person, especially wheat and barley. Some say that what's unique about Israel is to have such diverse, different species all growing together in such close proximity. Some say that it's specifically because they all harvest in the season of between Pesach and Shavuos, which is the time, Shavuos is the time when we come to the temple with the Bikurim. Bikurim is the first fruits that a farmer would bring from that which had harvested during the harvest season. That was after Pesach, after Passover. So on Shavuos, when we came to the temple, we would come together with Bikurim, these fruits in the basket. So what were the fruits that harvested, that ripened in Israel at that time? Pomegranates and olives and figs and dates, etc. But what I'm going to share with you is the Kabbalistic explanation, which is that each one of these 7 fruits directly correspond and relate to one of the 7 sirot of the person. Now, I could have printed out a chart, and the problem is I would have gotten us lost into the technicalities of the 7 sirot. I don't want to focus so much on the 7 sirot, so I didn't want to put it on the paper in front of you. But we're going to go from here. We're going to use these 7 sirot that the Zohar describes are reflected in the 7 different species of the land of Israel, and each one will represent a different character trait that we need to develop as expressed in the physical food that we are eating, okay? So let's go right to it. We're going to start with the first of the 7, this is from the Rizal, the first of the 7 species, or rather the first 2. What are the first 2 of the species? First one is wheat. First one is wheat, eretz chita, usaora, which means wheat and barley. You'll notice that wheat and barley are different than the other 5. The 7 fruit, right? The first 2 are grains. Wheat and barley are both grain. They're basic food, they're not really fruit. They're grain for sustenance. The other 5, those are desserts. Those are more special. Those are more delicious. Okay, so if you take the first 2, you have the grains, then you have the 5 fruit, which when we talk about the fruit of Israel, you'll notice that the fruit of Israel is only 5 fruits here. There's also eretz chita sa'ora. We don't have a custom to eat wheat and barley tonight. Good. We don't have a custom to have barley tonight. There's no barley, right? Lama lo, why is there no barley? Barley is one of the 7 fruits of Israel. Why don't we bring barley and why don't we eat wheat today? We have a lot of cake. Yeah, you have a good custom. 7 species, you got to eat a lot of cake, a lot of barley. I don't know, the barley cookies? So I'm sure some Jew could invent some like barley cookie or something. I don't know. A barley cake. You make me faces. I'm sure someone could figure it out. Barley soup tonight. There you go. Yeah, why don't we have barley soup tonight? So, well, some l'chaim on barley? What?
I mean, it would kind of be like oatmeal.
No, oatmeal is not barley.
No, I'm saying, I mean, it looks kind of, sort of. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Barley l'chaim, I don't know. So in life, in serving God, we have the grains of our divine service, and we have the fruit of our divine service. Which would mean we have those things that we need to do. You need to eat wheat and barley to survive. You need to eat food. You can't only eat fruits all day. Although we had a guest recently who only ate papaya. Only. Literally, she's not home. She ate papaya for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Yeah. She was here recently. She ate papaya, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay. Yeah, but most of us normal human beings need to eat other food. I mean, she's, whatever. I'm not saying she's not home. I'm saying, I couldn't eat papaya for breakfast, lunch, and supper. I would have a mental breakdown probably before my body went down. But I'm saying, so we eat the grains, which is what keeps us healthy and alive. And the fruit is for pleasure. Right? They taste good, they're pleasure. Meaning when we serve God with that which we need to do. The commandments, the Torah, that which we need to do. And then there's the joy, the feeling of excitement in our divine service. The excitement, the love, the happiness, the excitement of the service of God. Which would be like the grain, that which we need to do. And then the pleasure, the geschmack. You know what geschmack means? Yes. No one knows geschmack? Geschmack means it's like sweet. So it's geschmack is an expression. It's geschmack to be a yid. When it's geschmack to be a yid, it's sweet. It's enjoyable. So there's things that I need to do as a Jew, and there's things that I love doing. I enjoy them. They're geschmack. They're enjoyable. Sometimes Jews tell you, rabbis will tell you, you got to start with the basics, and you got to, first, focus on the things that are important, and you can enjoy the Judaism. Once you've achieved you've graduated to a certain level. Tu B'Shvat tells us, you got to focus on that which you enjoy about your Judaism as well. You can't only do the basics. You got to do that which you enjoy, that which gives you a complete Jewish service, is the one that's not only with grain, but it's with the sweetness of the fruit. It's enjoyable. Where our relationship with God is geschmack. It's geschmack. Okay? Now, more specifically, we'll discuss the first two, wheat and barley, even though we don't really eat them tonight, but they are the 7 species. And then we'll get to the fruit. So what is the difference between wheat and barley? Does anyone know? I'm asking more metaphorically, not so much in the physical way they grow.
One is,
In Jewish literature, in Jewish tradition, what is wheat called? Flour. That's what's it. Who eats flour? People. Who eats barley? Animals. In Jewish literature, wheat is called Maichel Adam, and barley is called Maichel Behemoth, the food of the fodder for animals. We see that, again, I don't get too technical and get too lost in each particular one, but we know that in general, all of the offerings that were brought in the temple were brought with flour. The mincha offering that was associated with the karbanot was fine sifted flour, with the exception of
Barley.
when was barley brought? What was the exception?
he was poor, no?
And then there's 2 exceptions actually. A sota, a woman that had acted improperly and had perhaps been unfaithful to her husband, and her husband warned her, and she was seen alone with him again, and he warns his wife. And there's a whole procedure in the Torah where this sota woman, the wayward woman, comes to bring an offering in the temple, and what does she bring?
The barley.
She brings barley. Why does she bring barley? The only time it brings barley, in the temple, because since she behaved in the animalistic way, she gave into her impulse and her pleasure instead of behaving like a person. Therefore, since her actions were animal-like, therefore she brings barley, which is considered food for an animal, and not the normal flour, which is food for the person. So, my friends, you're all smart. What would be the metaphorical lesson for us from these 2 foods, the grain, or the wheat, which is the food of a person, and the barley, which is the food of an animal? Yeah, you're close. We have, yes, we have 2 aspects to our identity. We have 2 parts to our identity, to our soul. We have the basic animalistic instincts within us, described at great length in Chassidus and in Tanya, called the animal soul, which I should point out, the animal soul is not evil. It's not the wicked soul or the Rasha. It's just a part of us that is self-serving, that is egotistical, that is wants to preserve ourselves. This is a human nature of a human being. We discussed this last week or 2 weeks ago. We were all born selfish, right? This is the way every kid is born, to be a self-centered human being. We were born, we cried when we wanted, we didn't care what anyone else was doing. That's human beings. And then we're meant, as time goes on, we grow, to start to transcend ourselves. But we all still maintain, to some degree, hopefully less than more, a sense of self. Well, to some extent, it's a healthy thing. You need to be, take care of yourself and protect yourself. And we have a certain sense of of the animal, which means the part of me which is materialistic, which cares about myself. That's the animal. We all have it, unless we're a tzaddik that's destroyed it, but we also all have, every one of us have, the godly soul, the nefesh elokis, which you learned about in Tanya. That's the part of us that's transcendent, that wants to be close to God. Right? So this is what you're learning. These 2 aspects of our identity, the animalistic side of us and the godly transcendental search and desire for purpose, for to be uplifted, to be elevated, to be on a higher plane of consciousness, is reflected in these two foods of the land of Israel: the food of man, the grain, the wheat, and the barley, which is the ma'achal behema, the food of the animal. Which tells us that what? What does that tell us? We need to take care of both aspects of our. We need to take care of both the wheat and the barley, because the two are not separate one from the other. Although we always describe them as like in conflict and in war, and there is a war between them. The way to get to the godly soul is through the animal. So of course the first one is the grain, the wheat. You got to take care of your godly soul. But in order to take care of your godly soul, you need to have a healthy body. You need to take care of your body. And this is one of the beautiful things, one of the main key spiritual messages in having a land of Israel, is that many Jews wonder, many people can wonder, why would a nation, why would a religion need a land? Why would a Jewish people need a land? Our identity is not formed on the land from which we come. We have Jews from all over the universe, and we're all still Jews. Regardless if we come from Africa, or from Tunisia, or from Spain, or from America, or from New York, or from Israel, we're all Jews. So why is a land important for a Jewish people? The reason why a land is important for us is because God wants us to find spirituality through a physical world, through mitzvot of the land. The point of the religion of Judaism is not to be disconnected from its physical reality. The point of Judaism is to find God within the material world. So the point is, again, I don't think I spend the whole class on, although I could. The point is, good evening, Eric. The point is that the way to find godliness is through the body. Through the body. When the Rebbe came to visit camp in 1956, I don't know exactly which year, 1956. It was the camp that's today on East Park, so that was in Swan Lake. The Rebbe came to visit the campgrounds, which for the Rebbe was a whole trip to go from Brooklyn to drive to the Catskill Mountains, and the Catskills, it's the whole day. It was like a 3-hour drive back and forth. But the Rebbe very, very much wanted to see the grounds where the kids were in camp, and he wanted to see for himself, make sure everything was up to standard. So he came, he pointed out different things. He wanted that they should put a fence around the lake. And then he said they should add more swings. That the playground there wasn't enough equipment on the playground. And he quoted to them a teaching of the Mitzra Rebbe, the second Chabad Rebbe, that a small hole in the body can lead to a large hole in the soul. Therefore, they should have swings, because a small hole in the body can bring a big hole in the soul. Meaning, the way to our soul in Hasidic philosophy is not by ignoring and avoiding and pushing away the body and pretending the body is unimportant in our spiritual quest for food for the soul, but the barley, the ma'achal behema, the food of the animal, is just as important as the food for the soul, because without the food for the animal, the soul won't be able to survive either. So we need to go hand in hand, they go together. The grain and the barley, the food of the soul, the search for godliness, and simultaneously the food for our body. One cannot coexist without the other. Okay? Then we come to the first of the 5 fruits. What's the first fruit? Geffen. Geffen is grapes. So what do you know about the way grapes grow? Let's get some grapes.
On a vine.
On a vine.
Yes.
But more than on a vine, you see this right here. Grapes are very, very unique. Now grapes grow in a cluster, in a bunch. Grapes will always grow very, very close together, squished together, like clutching each other. I mean, obviously all trees have a lot of fruit grow on the tree, but grapes are unique in the way they grow together. So so what does that represent for us? So now Rizal writes, what is the third midah. If you have chesed and gvura, which is the first two, the wheat is white, is chesed, and the barley is gvura, the animal. But what is the third of the 7 attributes of the soul? Tiferet. What's Tiferet? What's harmony? Harmony. Beauty is about blending different colors together. The life lesson for us from the cluster of grapes is the growing together, the harmony, the unity. The unity. The way that grapes grow together teaches a very important lesson in our service of God. Person might think that I'm going to grow all by myself, etc. The way a Jew grows is in a state of harmony and unity, in a cluster of a community together. Without the cluster, there's no grape. There's no grape. I want to read to you a story that happened a year ago. Not even a year, 8 months ago. I said it at the time, but I'm going to read it again. I went to find the exact text of a Facebook post. After on Lag BaOmer last year, when 49 people died, sadly, Kedoshim died in Meron by the grave of Shimon Yochai, where there was pushing, and the police closed the gate, and 49 people died. Terrible, terrible, terrible tragedy. The largest non-war tragedy in the land of Israel, in the history of Israel. So after there was 40-something families, 30-something families sitting Shiva. Some had multiple losses in the same family. And one of the families that had lost 2 kids was the Engerad family. They lost Moshe Natan Nata, who was 14, and his younger brother Yeshua Engerad, who was 9 years old. 2 brothers who were together. They both were crushed to death in Meron. After, they were sitting Shiva, 2 secular Israelis decided they wanted to do something. The whole Israel was, it was the biggest tragedy in the whole country's history. And so 2 secular Israelis decided, even though they're Ger Hasidim or Belzer Hasidim, the typical Hasidim with the long black coats and the pious and everything, decided, let's go together, let's go pay a Shiva visit. So he wrote afterwards a Facebook post about his visit that went viral, and I found it, had it saved. And so I don't know the person's name who wrote the post, but I'm quoting it now. Where he writes, I am currently leaving the Shiva at the home of the Engerad family who lost their 2 children, etc. And my heart is bursting with mixed feelings. The eyes are full of tears of sadness, but the heart is flooded with joy. When my friend Maor and I, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, entered their house, we stuck out in the Haredi, that's the very religious landscape. Some of the eyes were raised towards us, and 2 charming Haredim got up straight from their seat and led us right in front of Menachem Mendel, the father who lost his 2 sons. He caught our eye and immediately stopped speaking Yiddish with the rest of the comforters and turned to us in Hebrew. We froze, given the size of the group. I'm glad you came, he said, his eyes wet with tears, but his face radiates a glow. When will we have gotten to meet, you and me? More, and I look at him with his sparkling eyes as if an angel is talking to us. So he says, you and I are in pain together over the great loss and are strengthening each other. It does not matter if you are secular or religious, we are Jews. Whole crowd of comforters quietly began to shake back and forth as if in praise and listen to Menachem Mendel speak to us. But then he tells them as follows, this is the beauty part. He says to them, I want you to invite me to your simchas, to your joyous events, and I will invite you to my simchas. You came to join me in my morning, I want you to invite me when you have a simcha, and I will come, and you will come join me at my simchas. The tears just erupted spontaneously. A few seconds of silence, he looks down and he mumbles, Mi ka'amcha ki Yisrael, who is like your people, O Israel. And after the prayer, they went over to thank him, to give him the blessing of consolation, of Dichum Avelim, and he said to us, thank you for coming, you strengthened me. And so Ma'or and I leave the house, looking at each other, unable to talk. I do not digest what happened. As I write these lines, I still do not digest. This encounter represents the truth of our people, the endless free love that exists between us. That's the story. It's beautiful. Sadly, sometimes it takes tragedy, and I'm just thinking now, this past 2 days ago, 3 days ago, there was a rabbi, there were Jews in the temple taken hostage. Well, I didn't know till after Shabbos.
Right.
But it makes no difference what the rabbi's political views are, what kind of shul it was, and what they did before. At the end of the day, when you know that there's Jews that are in a hostage situation, you know that there are Jews that are in trouble, the political differentiations and the different theological beliefs, totally irrelevant. All that matters is that we're a cluster of grapes. And the grapes only grow in clusters. The Jewish people can only survive biyachad, together. And so for us, of all the fruits, the grapes are chosen as the first of the 5 fruits of the land of Israel because of how they grow together in unity, united as one. And this is the story for us. Okay. Next is the figs. The figs. We had a fig, a dried fig, te'ena. So, who could tell me? I want to focus a little on like the ecological, is that what it's called? The way it grows. I think it's more interesting. How do figs grow? When do figs ripen? Do you know?
When?
Yeah. You know how long it takes figs to ripen?
Trees?
They grow on trees. Figs grow on trees. The fig trees, sure. Figs grow on trees.
Oh, fig tree.
Figs are very, very hard to know when they ripen. And as I discovered when I was preparing this class, they're actually figs, each fig on the tree ripens independently of the other figs on the tree. There is no time to say, okay, the tree is ready, I planted it 3 months ago, here's the time. You can never know, there's no time. Like there's no date. 2 months. If you look online, how long for figs to ripen? You get a whole bunch of confusing answers that depends. There's no simple 6 weeks. It depends. You have to feel it. Depends on the climate. Depends on how much sunlight it got, etc., etc. And the figs, you be very careful how you pick them, because if you take them too early, they will not continue to ripen after you separate them from the tree. They're very delicate. And once you take them off, they're also very delicate. You can't squish them. If you put fruit figs together, they bruise very, very quickly, which is why it's very rare to find fresh figs, because they're very hard to transport the package, which is why the figs you're going to buy are always, I don't say always, but usually the only figs you can buy are, hello Eileen, everyone else watching, are dried figs, because they rather put them out to dry, because they're a very delicate fruit. If you put even figs on top of other figs, they'll bruise, and they'll start to ooze out all their juice, and they'll lose all their flavor. So here the fig is telling us the exact opposite. I'm bringing me a fig here. Let's put a fig. Lily, b'vakasha. Here. We got one. So here we got our fig with the crown on top. There we go. So when the figs grow, right? When the figs grow, nice. They're nice, like plump. You ever see fresh figs? Yes. They're big and plump. Then you put them out and they dry. And you got to get them exactly the right time, because they're very, very delicate. They're very, very hard to enjoy. I want to eat, but can't talk. Okay. It's good. Have more figs. Vivi's passing out the figs. So, what did we learn about the figs? What did we learn about the figs?
We're all different? No?
Oh, they're not only different, but different. We're all on our own journey, unique. The exact opposite. The cluster of grapes was telling us, you can't survive alone. You need to be part of a cluster of grapes. Comes along the figs. Cool. Look a little oops, she's losing figs. Making a mess. But here comes this fig. It's a little lopsided. It was probably nice and beautiful on the tree. He'll make it look good for the camera, right? Here comes the fig. And the fig grows on its own pace. It's its own journey. It's its own journey. There's no like one size fits all Judaism for the fig. No one size fits all Judaism for the fig. You are a fig, Vivi. My fig Vivi. So the fig is about a journey that happens for each fruit on its own. Spiritually, the emotion of the fig is that of the netzach. Netzach is the idea of domination. The figs grow for a long time. But the point that I want to talk about is the fact that figs, number one, are unique. Just because another fig on the tree is ripened, it got more sunlight, it had less shade. This fig is in the shade of the tree and it got less sun. It might need 2 more weeks until it's ready. That's a very powerful message for us for our kids, for the way we grow in our Judaism. Just because someone else is feeling this, or because someone else is holding there, I'm on my own journey with God and I need to go where I am. In addition, fig trees have a very long life. Fig trees live for a long time. They give fruits for many, many years. And therefore we can talk about a very famous, beautiful story in the Talmud that is specifically with a fig tree. What's the story of the fig tree in the Talmud? And the Roman Emperor Hadrian, anyone else? Beautiful story. The Roman Emperor Hadrian was once walking and he saw an old man who was working on planting a fig tree. Yeah? And he says to the old man, I don't say old man, I don't know, I didn't look it up, it's a famous story. He says, old man, why are you sitting and working to plant a fig tree? Don't you know that you will die? It's a very nice thing to say to somebody, by the way. Why are you working? You're going to die before you see the fig tree actually give forth fruit. So why are you sitting and working to make a fig tree if you will be dead before the fig tree is actually producing? It takes 15 to 20 years till they produce fruit. Long time. But they live for a long time too. So the man says to the emperor, just like my parents planted the fig tree for me, when I was a young kid, there was fig trees waiting for me. Where were the fig trees from? Because the previous generation, my father, my grandpa, they planted for me. So too I am planting a fig tree for the next generation. Beautiful story. Wise words. Wise words. And the point is, you tell me, what's the point? Point is that we need continuity, longevity, ensuring the future of the Jewish people. And that comes from being honest and real and true. When we understand who we are and we're real about it, then we can pass it on to the next generation and keep it going. It's specifically of all the fruits of the Torah. The Talmud tells the story of the fig tree. Tell us that we have an obligation, not only in our own Judaism, but we have an obligation in ensuring the future of the Jewish people as well. That's the fig tree. Okay, what's the next fruit? Pomegranate. Rimon. The Rimon. We had a Rimon. I don't know where we had it. The Rimon is smart? Why is the pomegranate? Oh, makes you smart. Okay, I don't know. Why not?
It contains 613 seeds.
So, Faith is saying, what's so cool about a pomegranate? It has 613 seeds. So first of all, I want to tell you a secret. Not a secret. When I was a young kid, my sister Malki and I, one Rosh Hashanah night, counted the seeds of the pomegranates. It wasn't 613.
No.
I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't 613.
They're hidden too.
They're hidden.
You miss
They're
them.
hidden. Secondly, I hope I'm not bursting your bubble, but actually in the Talmud it does not say that the seeds of a pomegranate have the 613 seeds of a pomegranate. You know what the Talmud says? It says in the Talmud that the seeds of a pomegranate are milei and mitzvos. What? Doesn't say. That's what Faith said. In the Talmud, here's the problem. Sometimes people, they grow a little bit of a beard. They try and dramatize something in the Talmud, and then people don't know the original source, and that becomes the accepted, that's the statement. So the Talmud doesn't say that there's 613 seeds in the pomegranate. The Hebrew words in the Talmud are that we eat a pomegranate because the Talmud says that afilu poishe Yisrael, even the sinners of Israel, Milayim mitzvahs kirimayim, are filled with seeds like a pomegranate. Nowhere in the Talmud does it say that there's 613 seeds in the pomegranates. It just says that the sinners, even every Jew has mitzvot, even the sinners of Israel are full of mitzvot like a pomegranate. Just like a pomegranate is full of seeds, you don't see it. You see a pomegranate, you open it up, it's full of seeds. So to any Jew, if you open them up, you'll see that they all did some kind of good deeds, whether they were nice to their mother, or they were kind to a stranger, or they, everyone has mitzvot that they have done for which they deserve credit. The number 613 seeds is not in the Talmud. Someone said, 613 mitzvot, 613 seeds, and somehow it grew from there. Till when I was a kid, Rabbi's house was counting the seeds to see the 613 seeds and being disappointed. It was only like 300 or something, I don't remember.
248?
As I'm saying, I'm reminded of a story. I have another story I plan to share, so I can tell you two stories. But before I tell you either story, let me first explain to you what is unique about the physical fruit of the pomegranate And after we understand what's unique about the physical fruit, then we can understand why it's connected to mitzvot, and I'll tell you the stories I was going to share with you. Tell me what's unique about the pomegranate. You can't eat the rind. You can't eat the outside. There's a lot of foods that you can't eat the outside.
They're difficult to get the seeds out.
Difficult to get the seeds out, but be more about the seeds than what? You can eat the seeds. Not only you could eat the seeds, you can only, exactly. Is there any other fruit that you can't eat the fruit and the only part of it you eat is the seeds? There's many fruits you can't eat the seeds. Many more fruits you can eat the seeds if you like them. In apples you don't eat the seeds, but if you eat them, okay, fine. You have a kiwi, I think whatever, it's all mixed together. But I don't believe that there's any other fruit that you only eat the seed. The fruit is the seed. The fruit is the seed. There's no other part. The whole rest of the fruit is unedible. So now we can understand why of all of the fruit in the beautiful kingdom of fruits that God made, it is specifically the pomegranate that is used as the metaphorical fruit of a mitzvah.
Because we eat only the inside.
Normally we eat the fruit, we're eating the flesh. Some, we do eat the seed, not eat the seed, we're eating the flesh of the fruit. Normally people can live life in the flesh, in the moment, in the physical. What's unique about a mitzvah is, what's unique about a pomegranate is that the seed is the food. In doing a mitzvah, the action, the deed is the mitzvah. It's not like I'm doing something for something. The seed is to grow some. What do we normally have a seed for? What's the seed in the fruit for? To plant for something else. So I eat the flesh, and if you do it, don't eat the seed, but it's for something else. The beauty of a pomegranate, or the lesson for us from a pomegranate, is that it's from the seed, or rather, the only part of the fruit we can eat is the seed. The value of the mitzvah is in the mitzvah. It's not just that you do a mitzvah like planting a seed for one day in the world to come, and I'll get the fruit of my labors now. The pomegranate is unique that the seed is the fruit. When doing a mitzvah, the mitzvah is not just seeds for something else. The mitzvah is, the action you're doing is the fruit for now. Right now, the whole purpose of the fruit is the mitzvah. And the mitzvah is the whole entire thing. It's not like there's the flesh and then there's the seed. There's my life and then there's a mitzvah for later on. The pomegranate is used as a metaphor of the mitzvah. I see people like that. The pomegranate is being used as a metaphor for the mitzvah because the pomegranate the seed is the fruit. And when we do a mitzvah, the mitzvah is not just for the future, the mitzvah is the fruit itself. That is the whole purpose. The whole fruit exists for the seed. So I'll tell you two stories. One about the statement in the Talmud. Both about mitzvot and pomegranate. How do you count the seeds of a pomegranate? So there was once a chassid of another rabbi. I don't remember if it was a Vishnitzer rabbi. I think it was a Vishnitzer rabbi, maybe a Belzer rabbi. And he came to this chassid of this other rebbe, this chassidic rabbi, came to meet the rebbe in Yichidus, in the private audience, in the meeting. He was telling the rebbe, he was about his rebbe, how beautiful it is. So the rebbe, our rebbe, the Lubavitcher rebbe, asks this other chassid, tell me a vard, tell me an idea, tell me a Torah thought that was shared by your rebbe. Tell me something, repeat to something you learned from your rebbe. So first he was like stuttering, whatever, he didn't come prepared to actually teach the rebbe. He just came to get a blessing. I hear the rebbe asking him, tell me something you learned from your rebbe. Which the rebbe, in the early time, the rebbe used to do that to our mitzvah boys, and the rebbe he wanted to hear, the rebbe cared deeply about other people, he really wanted to hear what they had to say. So finally he says that the rebbe asked the question on the statement in the Talmud. The Talmud asks, as we mentioned before, that even the sinners of Israel are full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate. So the Rebbe asked the question, how could it be that a sinner of Israel has mitzvahs like a pomegranate? There are sinners, how could it be that they're considered to be full of mitzvahs? They have some mitzvahs scattered here and there, I understand. But to describe them as milei mitzvahs, they're full of mitzvahs, how could you say that they're full of mitzvahs if they're sinners? That's the question. Was that a question? If they're sinners, why would the Talmud describe the sinners as being full of mitzvahs, like a pomegranate? It's full of seeds. How are they full of mitzvahs? They're sinners. The Rebbe all of a sudden went from being very, like, in a good mood and smiling, in a second it became very, very serious. And they didn't even let him give the answer. And the Rebbe said, I read the same Talmud, the same words, I have a very different question. What's the Rebbe's question on these words in the Talmud? If they're full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate, how could the Gemara call them sinners? You understand? If they're full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate, why is the Talmud describing them as the Pesha you saw, as the rebellious sons of Israel, the sinners of Israel? They're full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate. Why are you putting them down and saying that they're sinners? Understand? That was the Rebbe's question. The exact opposite. You're asking that since they're sinners, why are we describing them as full of mitzvot? I read the same words of the exact opposite question. If they're full of mitzvot, why is the Talmud describing them as the sinners of Israel? Okay. That's one story. Second story, I shared it Friday night, so Robert heard it. Eric heard it, but I'll share for the rest of you. I only heard it this week for the first time, so it's like so exciting. There is a lady, she's not alive anymore, who lived in Montreal. Her name was Ida Bloomberg. Now, this lady, Ida Bloomberg, is actually a distant cousin of mine, or my grandfather's. She grew up in, you also heard it too. She grew up in a Chabad family in Russia. She came from Shedrin. I don't know the whole history now, but she came from Shedrin, which is a Chabad, a very, very strong Chabad stronghold in Russia. That's where my grandfather's family was from. She was related. She came to America in the very, very beginning, to Montreal, to Canada, right in the beginning of the 1900s. And she came from a Chabad family, strong religious family. When she came to America to make a fortune for herself, young woman all by herself, she kept Shabbos. She was Shomer Shabbos. She was religious. But she went to work, and like most Jewish women back then, she went to work as a seamstress in a factory, just like my grandmother, exact same story. But no, in the beginning of the 1900s, people worked 6 days a week. Saturday was a regular work day. And those days, immigrants had very, very little bargaining power. You know, they were very expendable. There were a lot of immigrants. And Shabbos, she didn't go to work. She didn't go to the factory. Monday, they asked her, where were you? She said, I was Shabbos. I can't go to work on Shabbos. I'm religious. So they tell her, if you don't come this Saturday to work, don't bother coming back on Monday because you're fired. She didn't go to work that Shabbos, and Monday they fired her. So she found another factory, and the same thing. She didn't work on Shabbos, so they fired her. A third factory, I don't know how long it took, but eventually reached a point where she had no money. She was all alone, she had no one to support her. She couldn't, she didn't have food. No, you don't have food, you don't have food. There wasn't a big community back then. And eventually she broke, she had no choice, and she started to work on Shabbos. Started to work on Shabbos. She was still very strongly Jewish, but she was no longer religious. But it bothered her very deeply. She felt like, I rejected my religion, working on Shabbos, I promised I would stay religious, and I broke, and I caved in, and it bothered her. Came 1945. In 1945, many Chabad Hasidim who were trapped in Russia were able to escape from Russia in the beginning of the 40s. There was a time when Russia opened up the border to allow Polish citizens out of Russia back to Poland after the war. There was a time when Polish citizens were allowed to go back to Poland. And many Russian Hasidim saw the opportunity to escape Russia. And so they bought on the black market the passports of dead Polish people that died during the war. And they used those passports to to escape Russia, get to Poland, and to survive. And so my grandfather and his uncle, that's how his mother, they survived like that. They got passports, they got out of Russia, and many of these Hasidim ended up in Shanghai. Wow. That's where they ended up. It's a whole long story. And from there, some went to Paris, they came to Paris, and eventually from there, some went to Israel, some actually stayed in Paris. My great uncle, Nemna, became the head of the yeshiva in Paris, where he stayed the rest of his life. And my grandfather really wanted to come to America, didn't have enough to get to America. This cousin, Ida Bloomberg, is the one that actually sponsored him to come to Montreal. That's how he ended up in Montreal. That's how my family ended up in Montreal. In 1945, the Rebbe, the previous Rebbe I'm talking about, was Yortzei, was this past week. So he decided to open a yeshiva in Montreal. And he sent 9 of the young yeshiva students, there was 9 guys that were in Shanghai, who would become the beginning of the Chabad community of Montreal, and the Rebbe arranged they should all go together as a group to Montreal. Then the idea of a shliach moving to a city by himself didn't exist. It was unheard of. But a group of 9 guys together, well, many, but 9 guys ended up moving. Mabel Kramer and Vol Gringlatz, who I learned when I was in Yeshiva Montreal. I learned by him. Rabbi Hendels, or Rabbi of the community. These 9 guys, most who stayed in Montreal for the rest of their lives, moved to Montreal. Now they start whatever. And Label Kramer was in charge. They needed a building. They needed a place. So they didn't have someone told them they needed a place. They needed a building. So Ida Bloomberg, who was close to my Zaidi, who was involved, he wasn't one of the 9 yeshivas, the Rebbe, one of the 9 shluchim of the previous Rebbe, but he was part of the very, very small Chabad community. So much she got involved in the deal, but she wrote to the Rebbe as follows, the previous Rebbe. And she said, I don't know, listen to the guilt of a Jewish woman. I don't know if you'll accept my money not since I'm no longer religious, and since I earned my money. So basically, she became very wealthy. She very quickly worked her way up in the factory. She was very, very ambitious. She worked her way up, and then she said, why am I doing this for someone else? I can do it for myself, right? Like all Jews, and she went her own. She became very, very wealthy. Very wealthy. So there was a very rich Tamar family. There was a lot of money there. And she wrote to the Rebbe, I made my money working on Shabbos, so I don't know if you'll accept my money. But if you will, it will be my honor to buy a building for the yeshiva.
Wow.
Buy a building for the yeshiva. And she did. She bought a building, single-handedly, she gave the money, and she bought a building, which still today her name is on the building, she bought a building for yeshiva. This is 1945.
Where's the building?
It's on Westbury Street. So, at some point after that, it was arranged she should go to meet the Frierdiker Rebbe. Now, she came from a Chabad family. And she, this is not like today, today in America everyone's welcome and no judgment and all that. Coming from Europe, a woman's not religious, it's a lot of judgment. She felt, not just judgment, it's not the right word to use. She felt internally guilty that she's not, she kind of, even though she bought a building for Chabad, she felt like she abandoned her family, she abandoned her religion, not being religious. So she comes from Montreal to New York to meet the Frierdiker Rebbe. Again, we're past his yahrzeit was a few days ago. She comes to meet the previous Rebbe, and the previous Rebbe starts to bless her. He's giving blessings to her. I don't know, whatever, he's blessing her and giving her. The Rebbe knew her family. So she came from a illustrious Chabad family. There's more details I can share about the family, about the paying for the tehillah, but that's not for right now. Anyway, this girl, she's like this Jewish guilty neshama, and it's like bothering her. The Rebbe is praising her and blessing her. And she's not religious. And she's like, it's like the more that the Rebbe is giving her blessings, the more uncomfortable she's feeling, until she can't handle it anymore. She says, Rebbe, genug shayim. Enough already. So the Rebbe asks her, was haste? What do you mean, already? Enough already. I'm giving you blessings. Was haste, enough blessings? So she says to the Rebbe, Balach bin nicht frum. I'm not religious anymore. So how could you bless me? I'm not religious. So she tells the Rebbe, not the Rebbe telling her. She said, I'm not religious, how could you bless me? So the Frierdiker Rebbe told her, wer weiß, wer ist frum, und wer weiß, wer ist nicht frum. Who knows who's really religious, and who knows who's not really religious? Understand? Who knows who is religious, who knows who's not religious? Point is, that even the sinners of Israel are full of a mitzvah like a pomegranate, because the main part of the pomegranate is the seed, the action, the deed, not just for something else. The fruit is the mitzvah. The deed is the mitzvah. Okay? That's the message for us from the seeds of the pomegranate, where the seeds are the mitzvah, the actual action is the mitzvah itself. Okay. What's next? What's the next one? What's next on the table, Viri?
Tamar?
Nope.
Dates?
No, before the dates. This is left. The olives. Eretz zeis shemen chalav udvash, a land flowing with oil and the honey of the dates. Let's talk about the olives and then the dates. We still got okay. Let's go. So what's unique about an olive? What comes from the olive? What's the olive known for?
Olive oil.
Olive oil. Right? Taking it oil last time. Oil comes from olives, primarily.
Also as a kingdom.
What?
Wherever you do anything very important in our religion, you put oil on his head.
Yes, you anoint a priest or a king with oil. That is correct. That is true. What, my friends, is the message for us from the fact that you take an olive? Tastes good. It's nothing, whatever. But when you squeeze the oil, you squeeze it, and out comes the light, the oil, that becomes a source of light, the luminary. What's the message for us? When you crush a Jew, you know what comes out? The oil comes out, the light comes out. In the last mimer of the Rebbe, he talks about this at length, the idea of what's called kosis lamar. It's based on the verse of the Torah. The Torah says you should take talk about the laws of the menorah. So you should command Aaron to take the oil, kosis lamar, that was crushed, to be a source of light, to be a luminary. The way that an oil, if you were to take a wick and stick it into the hollow of the, take those olives are pitted, and just take a wick and stick it into the hollow place where the pit was, and lay it on fire, garnished, right? Nothing will happen. The method by which the olive can become the source of light is by being crushed. By being crushed. Kasis lamar. Those are the words of the Torah. Crushed to be a source of light. The Rebbe speaks about this in the context of the Purim story. In context of the Purim story. In the Purim story, what happened to the Jewish people?
They want to crush them.
The Jews were crushed. The Jews were living for 11 months with a threat of extinction and extermination hovering over their heads. There was a decree by the king that every single Jewish man, woman, and child would be killed on the same day. They knew it. It wasn't a secret. And yet, at that time of being crushed, all the Jews that had slacked off on their Jewish observance and that had not listened to the guidance of Moshe Rabbeinu, they all came, 22,000 students came together from the Torah. They refused to convert. They became strong in their Judaism. The crushedness of exile revealed the light of their souls. And this is the next lesson for us in the fruits of Israel. And sometimes we think, when we face difficult situations, when we're pushed up against the wall, when we're in a difficult scenario, in a difficult circumstance, and God forbid there's a hostage situation or whatever it is, all of a sudden, the neshama comes out, full force. Full force. I'll give you a very, very famous example. A very famous example. This idea of the olive that when crushed reveals the oil to be the source of light. You heard of Daniel Pearl? Of course, we all heard of Daniel Pearl. He's a hero. Why was he a hero? He was an American journalist, so those don't know, he was an American journalist who he was the head of the South Asia Bureau of the Wall Street Journal. He was living in Mumbai, India. He traveled from India to Pakistan after 9/11. He went to go report on Richard Wright, the shoe bomber. And he went to go meet some people. He thought he was going for an interview, and actually was set up, and he was captured on January 23rd, 2002. He was captured in some Karachi, wherever, by some hotel, by a group called the National Movement for the Restoration of Pakistani Sovereignty. And they said he was a spy, and this is the whole, the ransom note to the American government, that they wanted all of the Pakistani terror detainees should be released, and that they should stop the sale of F-16 fighter jets to the Pakistani government, etc., etc. They tried to find him. They were not successful. Didn't end like ended this past Shabbat in Texas. 9 days later, he was. They sent pictures of him, handcuffed with a gun to his head, with like a newspaper to show the date and all that. And 9 days later, the terrorists beheaded. They cut off his head. Actually, I looked for it today. You can find the video. I don't want to watch it, obviously, but with a knife, not even like a guillotine, with a sword, sitting in. I remember seeing years ago, sawing off. Like, it takes time. Yes, chained with a thing with a beard growing already. And what are the last words of Daniel Pearl? Now, Daniel Pearl grew up in Encino, California. He was not involved in religion. He wasn't religious. He went to regular school. He was not Jewish. He was not actively Jewish in any way.
I don't remember exactly the words, but he
said he was proud to be Jew.
His final words were, "My name is Daniel Pearl." I'm quoting out verbatim, exactly his final words. "I'm a Jewish American from Encino, California, USA. I come from, on my father's side, my family is Zionist. My father is Jewish. My mother is Jewish. I am Jewish. My family follows Judaism. And we've made numerous family visits to Israel." This is what the guy says as they're holding a sword against his throat a minute before they're going to literally cut off his head. Literally. This is something in America, which was said under duress, and then his head was severed off of his body. But these are the last words of a Jew. My father is a Jew. My mother is a Jew. And I'm Jewish. That's it. Die as a Jew. Now, if you would have asked Daniel Pearl the month before who he is, he would have said, I'm a reporter for the Wall Street Journal. He wouldn't tell you his father's a Jew and his mother's a Jew and he went to go visit Israel. That's not how he would have defined himself. He wouldn't have said, I'll always be a Jew. He told you what his career is. But when push comes to shove, and when the olive is crushed, and the soul of the Jew is being squeezed out of us comes oil that can illuminate the world. That's the power of a Jew. When you squeeze him, when you crush him, the light luminary comes forth. Okay. And then we come to our final, last of the fruits, which is the date palm. The date palm is Malchus, royalty, the Yisod, whatever. What's the date palm? So we live in Florida, right, my friends? What do you know about date palms? Why are palm trees? They have a lot of fruit. First of all, there's actually some male and female date palms. But what's so cool about palm trees? Why do palm trees do so well in Florida and survive all the hurricanes?
They bend on some roots.
You hear what Sidel said? They bend in the wind. Date palms are very, very resilient trees. They can grow anywhere. They can grow in wind climate. They can grow by the beach. They can grow in storms. They can survive. Because most trees, I'm tough. Don't mess with me. You know who I am. I'll show you. I'm a tough, big, oak tree. I'm 100 years old. Along comes a nice storm. But palm trees, they bend with the wind. They're able to, they have this ability to bend, and therefore, they don't break. And therefore, they don't break. Says, that's why I shake. Yeah, exactly. I'm tall like a date palm. Yeah, tall like a date palm. Mother was still like a short now. And it says in Tehillim, Tzaddik, Katamar Yifrach. What does that mean? A tzaddik will flourish like a date palm. Right? A tzaddik katamar, like a date palm, the tzaddik will flourish. Which means that dates stand tall and they grow anywhere. Like the tzaddik. What's the secret of the tzaddik? And the secret of a tzaddik is he has a certain level of resilience because of his humility to Hashem. And in whatever situation he finds himself in, he goes with it. He goes with the flow. He goes with the wind. He goes with the, he's tough. Tzaddik is tough. Not because he's tough, I say that, not because he's tough. Because it's not him. It's God. When you're able to go wherever Hashem sends you, you're there, and you don't break because of it, that's the secret of a tzaddik. The resilience of a Jew. The resilience of a Jew, the ability to stay no matter what the winds will blow, no matter who will be in power, no matter what the culture say, no matter what my friends say, no matter what whatever TVs. There's like a difference who says what, or what's going on, or what society says. The tzaddik is like a date palm. No matter what's going on, it could be in the desert, right? Palm trees grow in deserts. It could grow with very little water. They stay strong, they're true to who they are, the storms can come, drought can come, and they're fine. This is the final message for us of the dates. To be like a date palm tree, to be resilient, to stand strong. I'll end up with this final story, final thought. That's one thing. A few years ago, there were archaeologists who were digging by Masada, And you know what they found? They found seeds of a date palm. They found date seeds. They found date seeds. Now, the story of Masada, Jews that were living in Masada is over 2,000 years ago. Has been an empty place for 2,000 years. But because it's a very, very dry, arid place, it's very, very protected over there because of the climate. So it didn't rot or whatever. It was like preserved in the salty air. And so it was preserved and it still was like fresh. It still had its nutrients or life to it. So what did? They planted this date palm called Mitzra. That's what they called the date palm. The Mitzra, because Mitzra was the oldest person to live, 973 years. So they called this date palm the Mitzra. And after much experiment, whatever, they planted this palm, this seed, from 2,000 years ago. They planted it in somewhere in Israel, and it grew, a tree grew from it. A tree grew from the date seed of 2,000 years ago. But for a long time it didn't give fruit. And then last year, was it 2 years ago? 2 years ago, it gave fruit. It gave fruit. And a bunch of people from Israel got together, different than the scientists and all that, to eat the fruit of the tree that had been waiting for 2,000 years. And it was sweet fruit. So here you have the story of Jews in Israel eating the fruit of the Tamar, of the date palm, that when we talk about the resilience of the tzaddik, who no matter what situation God puts him in, he's able to go with the wind and survive the storms and to survive the drought and to survive the sun. Whatever it is, it doesn't change. They can survive it all. The secret that you see even today, that fruit from 2,000 years ago, it's still flourishing. There's still new fruit that is being eaten today from that fruit back then. So that's the final lesson for us from the final one of the 7 fruits of Israel. To briefly review, to be the wheat and the barley is the food of the soul, the godly soul, the food of the animal soul, because the two need each other to live. You can't have a healthy soul without a healthy body, and vice versa. You can't have a healthy body without a healthy soul either. The fruit of the grape, which grows in the cluster, the fruit of the fig that grows on its own, that ripens when it's ripe, it can't be pushed together, the longevity of the fig tree that we plant for the next generation, the message for us from the pomegranate, that the fruit of the pomegranate is the seed, like the Mitzra is the purpose of the creation. The olive, that when you crush it, out comes the light. And finally, of the palm tree that can survive against Allah, keep on giving fruit thousands of years later, because it's connected to God. And we continue to give our own fruit. And we continue to shine our fruit out to the world. And that others should enjoy our fruit and gain from our fruit and share our fruit for many healthy, happy years.
Amen.
And now I'm going to eat the fig that's been sitting in front of me for half an hour. Okay. There you go. Okay. Good night, my friend. I said a blessing before.